That's bad business. How long do you think I'd stay in operation if every time I pulled a job it cost me money? If he'd just pay me what he's spending to make me stop robbing him, I'd stop robbing him. You probably inherited every penny you got. Inherited guys, what the hell do they know?
Hey guys, welcome back to the Blood and Black Rum Podcast. I'm Ryan from ClosePlayStation.com, and I'm joined with my co-host Martin.
How's it going?
Yeehaw! I don't think that's uttered in this film whatsoever, but throw it out there anyway to get the atmosphere started here. We're back, and so there was a event that happened just recently. Last week that we contemplated doing for a recent episode. I'm sure we're still going to do it at some point. But Gene Hackman died, and we talked about potentially doing an episode for Gene Hackman, but I don't think we wanted to derail what we had already talked about doing for this episode. So is that next time? Are we going to do a Gene Hackman movie for the next episode, you think? Something like that.
I think we should. I'm down.
Makes sense. I'll be honest with you. I'm not a Gene. I haven't seen a ton of Gene Hackman movies myself. So.
Well, I have.
You have. Right.
I love Gene Hackman.
Yeah, no, but today's episode, we have a couple of different Screen Guild actors for the occasion. And we talked about doing this one. I think we've talked about it quite a bit in the past. You brought it up quite a bit to do, especially since it ties into our love of, Western movies. And we've done a lot of spaghetti Westerns. We haven't done a terribly large number of more like American style Western films.
I think the only one we've done is Pat Garrett. And Billy the Kid.
Yeah, probably. And yeah, well, I guess in Tombstone is more, obviously.
No, all right, you're right. I'm sorry. How could I forget Tombstone? Just...
Right. Of course. And, but for the most part, we generally have stuck to spaghetti Westerns. And, it's time to kind of get back into it. And this is one that, like I said, you've been talking about and I've never seen before. And so that was something that you wanted to reconcile as well, to actually have me see this movie, just to experience it, because I think you have seen the movie a number of times now, right?
Yes.
So it was something that's, old hat to you, new to me. And it's always good to have that on the show, and a new experience and an old one to kind of combine those together and get to inform different opinions about, nostalgia versus newly watched movie. So we're talking about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid today from 1969, starring the esteemed Paul Newman, who I think we talked about in the last episode a little bit, but nice guy.
A very nice guy.
Good guy all around, if you don't count starting, a nice salad dressing line and cookies. Also, I think was a nice philanthropist as well. Great actor. Funny guy.
Amazing frozen pizzas.
Yeah, now that's one I have not delved into, is the frozen pizza line.
You haven't had the Newman's Own frozen pizzas?
I don't believe so, but I'll have to try it. I don't do a lot of frozen pizzas at this, point in my life. But
well, that's what you could tell I'm a bachelor. The Newman's Own pizzas is delightful, and I'm not even a thin crust pizza guy.
Okay, so it's thin crust,
but they do have a couple ones that aren't. But it's mainly like thin crusted for like $5.99, the quality you get with them is very good.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with a lot of the Newman's line is that it's not that expensive either. You know,
no, because it's the same thing. Like again, like I will forever talk about this Newman's Own salsa. You would never think Newman's Own salsa would be something amazing, and it's terrific. It's like,
and as you said before, there was a missed opportunity in business of not getting a chip line going with that as well. Newman's Own chips, so
corn chips, nice. But
you think these are Paul's own recipe? Paul's pizza, right?
It'd be great. It'd be great. Like that's.
I know.
Why did Paul Newman's film career slow down? Well, after coming out with the dressing, he was locked in a room, just
straight from his journals at home.
Like
he's ripping out recipes.
How the hell do I make my pizza into a goddamn frozen thing? Oh my god!
Paul's own peach salsa recipe. Man was a connoisseur, and not only.
Yeah, I say that I haven't actually had the salad dressing.
Oh, you never had any of the salad dressings before?
No, I've never had Newman's Own salad dressing.
It makes a good dressing as well. So yeah, I mean, it's crazy though. You just think about it, how the proliferation of Newman's Own, because it really has become a pretty big business. If he has it's not like they started like willy-nilly just ripping off like Newman's Own cereal and all kinds of products. They expanded into like select products and they stayed in that niche, and that's pretty much it. It's kind of interesting how they've become a sort of like alternative to salsa picante sauce and stuff like that. I don't know. It's cool. It's cool to see that. And then not only Paul Newman and Butch Cassidy, because he's Butch Cassidy, but we've got the Sundance Kid as well, Robert Redford.
Handsome as all hell in this movie.
I would like to dye my hair that blonde.
You kind of look like
I could, yeah. I mean,
you could be Robert Redford.
He's definitely got my hair is very thick and curly. His is definitely more wispy and straight. But other than that, I do have like a similar look to Robert Redford. I would say, and like with the mustache combination too. Similar. My hair is a lot more brown though. Like I said, I want to give myself that really like sun-dyed blonde that he's got in this movie, and in other movies as well. But here it's very, very blonde, almost like they're out in the desert and consistently getting dyed by the sun. Very handsome man though. You're right. And especially, as we'll talk about, like just the way the character of the Sundance Kid as well is just like, attractive as a man in this movie.
Debonair.
Yeah. But I will say though that the idea, the name, the Sundance Kid, not tough enough in my opinion. It sounds like. Actually, my wife doesn't really know this movie, apparently. Like, this is one of the movies that she never really heard of it. She was like, Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. That sounds like a 70s pop group, Like,
I was gonna say like a 70s gay porn.
And that too. Yeah, the Sundance Kid, kind of belies the masculine affinities that he has in this movie, because it's sort of like, it kind of sounds like it's this guy that's tagging along and just kind of, I don't mean to say this derogatorily, but a guy that just is kind of, on the less mask side of things and just kind of the sidekick character.
Well, you can kind of tell by his hairstyle that, he's
the Robin to the Batman.
I was to say, what do you think's worse? Robert Redford and Paul Newman being like, these debonair gunslingers that are supposed to be probably in like their mid-30s.
Mm-hmm.
Paul Newman at this time would have been 44. And
you can definitely tell that he's getting older in years. No, I mean, I'm not saying he looks old in this movie, but he certainly doesn't look like a spry young chicken,
Like, so what's worse, that or Chris Christopherson as fucking Billy the Kid?
Yeah,
40-year-old Chris Christopherson with his early mullet, like, I'm Billy the Kid.
Yep.
Not saying he was bad in the role, because I obviously watched our podcast, listen to our podcast from years ago, and you'll see. I'm just saying, like, it's kind of seems a little out of place.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that he does a pretty good job, and we'll talk about, later on in the show. I think, he does a good job in this movie as Butch Cassidy. Interesting to me too that the film brings this up probably about like midway through the movie. Is Butch Cassidy is not his real name, and they both share their real names. Is like kind of interesting. You pick the name Butch Cassidy just like randomly. You're like, my name's Robert, but I go by Butch Cassidy. It's kind of an interesting pseudonym for yourself. Anything else you want to add about the intro before we sidestep to go to our beer talk?
No, I think that's about it. I mean, like I said, this is a movie I've kind of harped on for years to see, just because it's definitely quintessential Americana Western.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
I do think it's kind of fallen out of the zeitgeist over the past couple of years. It used to be something that was like referenced pretty frequently, but now I don't think it's.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's kind of overshadowed by some of the more the popular spaghetti westerns, but still pretty well received. I looked on Letterboxd to see what other people were rating and had said about it, and it's got a 4.1, so that's pretty high for a Letterboxd. I was expecting more like a 3.6, something like that. That's kind of where everything kind of lands, as a average, but 4.1 is pretty high. I was
say it's constantly been on AFI's like number, not just westerns, but like in the top 100 films list. So
yeah, and on IMDb it also has an 8 out of 10, which again, that's pretty high for an IMDb average. So interesting. All right, let's talk about the beer that we have on the show. I think we've covered this before, but Tree House Brewing Company has been a major player in the IPA world for quite a while now, and it has expanded into our area in Saratoga Springs. If you've heard of our area, you might have heard of SPAC or the Saratoga Racetrack, the Travers.
They only had the Preakness there last year.
Was that what it was? The Preakness? That I couldn't remember which race they ran there, but besides the Travers, but. Yeah, they a pretty big racing area, and has been really kind of revitalized and become a big hub of the area. And Treehouse has moved into that location, and they've got a big compound there. Recently I had the chance to visit and grab some beers there, and Martin did too. And right now they're only open for actually can pickup.
Sorry, I was wrong. It's the Belmont, not the
Was it the Belmont? Yeah, okay. They ran the Belmont last year. And so we, since it's become a pretty big stable in Saratoga area, and we've found ourselves down there a couple times, Martin was there just the other day. It just happened to coincide with their release of a couple of 10th anniversary cans that they've been doing. And they released both a beer called the 10th Canniversary, of the anniversary of them canning their line of beers, as well as the Monson 10th Anniversary, which it was a location that they began at and began putting beers out at that Monson location, and had all kinds of problems with it, but was kind of like a nostalgia factor for the Treehouse brand, and was like the initial starting points of their organization. So we got both of those 10th anniversaries because we can't miss out with the FOMO. That's something like, beer. Sometimes they release a bunch of beers and they sound good, but they're available, year round or, seasonally. A 10th anniversary comes once a year or once a decade. I'm sorry. And so, and the specific 10th anniversary comes only once. So I can't miss out on that. So while he was there, we said, you know what, let's grab the 10th anniversary beers and we'll do one of them on the show. So we picked 10th Canniversary because I like the name. I think it's catchy. Nice little ring to it. But we're doing the 10th Canniversary. And it is in line with their, traditional beer style, a double IPA. I'll let you go first. What do you think about the 10th Canniversary?
It's a damn good beer. Very melony. As the guy, surprisingly, because I haven't really had too many like watermelon NIPAs, and kind of honeydew cantaloupe, like just like juicier, sweet, watery sweetness to it. When I was picking up the order at Tree House in Saratoga, and by the way, that thing is a fucking fortress. It's like huge, and I can't wait.
They have armed guards outside.
Yeah, I can't wait for them to be fully up and operational.
Yeah.
And the guy that was bringing out the order and was asking me, like, have you had these yet? And I was like, they've been out a day. So no.
Yeah, right.
But I was like, no, I haven't. I can't wait to try them. And he's like, oh yeah, have you had the Equilibriums before? I'm like, yeah. He's like, very mellow. He's like, I think it's, very melony, very, very, if you like that, you're going to love these. And I was like, yeah. And I totally see where he's coming from. It's definitely got a nice, like, and I'm not the biggest fan of like watermelon, but definitely incredibly juicy, melony, very smooth, has a nice hop bitterness and crispness to it at the end, well rounded. Little bit of skunk to it. Not like a bad skunk, but like kind of
like
just
a little
like
dankness.
Yeah, danks. Yeah, dankness to it, like to kind of give it like a nice roundedness. I like it a lot. I think it's definitely interesting. Really good. If you're around Massachusetts or upstate New York and you got a Treehouse by it, go grab them. They're definitely worth the money. It's a damn good IPA.
Yeah, I would agree. I think this is a really solid beer all around. It's exceptionally tropical. It's got that nice melony, bursting citrus flavor to it. It is definitely a flavorful beer. There's no wateriness at all to this. It's every sip, every part of the taste is apparent. Nice creaminess to it. Overall, really good double IPA. Definitely, you can feel the alcohol percentage as well. It's about 8%, and I do think that is you can taste that alcoholness, but it's not overpowering. I think it's really good. It's probably a distillation of like their best NIPAs that are, it's kind of combined to one. Melony flavors and citrus are really coming out, and I think it's, really solid beer all around. It's a good way to celebrate the 10th anniversary because I think it does pretty much solidify the main themes of Treehouse as a company, and also manages like some of their best taste into one can. So, especially for someone who's like, where do I start? A 10th anniversary sounds good. And this is probably something that they are proud of. I would say, this is definitely a beer to try. Very nice. And again, too, Treehouse now, with it being so close, or relatively close, we've gotten it a number of times now for pickup. And, I haven't really been disappointed with anything that I've had. I know some people like to talk about, because Treehouse has become a much bigger entity than it used to be. It used to be one location. It's now expanded to like 5 or 6. Even I can't remember.
It's more of that. They got one at
the
Deerfield, Charlton's, Sandwich, Tewksbury, Boston, Woodstock, and Toga. So.
Yeah, so like, and not all of those are brewing, but it's definitely an expanded operation. They at any one time they have like 25 to 30 beers in cans that you can get. So and not only that, they make coffees now. They make cocktails now.
Whiskeys, I think.
Hard liquor in some cases. They might even make some seltzers. I don't even know.
They got hard seltzers.
So like they're becoming like the smaller Sam Adams. I shouldn't say that because it's definitely not as expansive as that. But
knock on wood, you don't want to say like.
I know a lot of people have talked about how it's potentially gone downhill in flavor and price range and all of that as the expansion occurs. But to me, it hasn't really. There's not been a noticeable difference in quality for me. I think that they're still putting out really good beers. And to be honest with you, like if you're coming to Treehouse and you're like, this is not that good of a beer, like then I need to be drinking wherever you're drinking because, you know, there's a huge difference between, you know, some of the lower tier, or like not even lower tier, but just like more mass produced beers and then Treehouse. It's just, you know, night and day. So, yeah. So it's very, very good. If you have a chance, check out the 10th anniversary beers. Very fun. All right.
Damn good.
That's right. Let's talk about Butch Cassidy. Oh, go ahead. What do you got?
Shit. Can't remember.
Lost it. All right. We'll come back to it.
Yeah,
No problem. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. So one thing I wanted to start off by talking about, I find very interesting about this movie, is that it sort of has like a aimless wandering quality to it. Something akin to
Two Mules from Sister Sarah.
not akin to Two Mules. Definitely not. No, but it has like this nice wandering quality to it that sort of like, because if you try to stop and just nail down like, the storyline is this and just distill it into one sentence, there isn't really one storyline. It's more like we follow Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. They do stuff. They rob trains. They go cross country. They travel to Bolivia. But it's more about the travel along the way, right? I don't think that there's any one like particular scenario in this movie where you can like really narrow it down and say like that is the overall plot of the film. It's like a nice traveling buddy Western, which to me is not that common in Western films, spaghetti or otherwise.
Nice buddy cop movie.
Yeah. I mean, better than buddy cop movies, because a lot of times, especially in like a buddy cop movie too, there's an overarching plot to it. It's like, these guys are tasked with, you know, investigating this, and then they have shenanigans because they're buddies. In this movie, there's sort of like a like a nomadic quality to it, where they just like going places and doing things and stealing money and stealing payroll and just having fun with each other.
Mm-hmm. I do remember what I was going to say though. Back on the Saratoga point real quick. My little heart got so excited, and Red Dead Redemption 2 is probably my favorite game of all time now. When you're doing the mission, stealing the race horses, and for the like first time ever, Rockstar's including actual like real life cities and stuff, and they're like, "Where are you from?" And Arthur's like, "Well, we're from a horse breeding farm up in Saratoga."
Yeah, little shout out there.
That's us. Yeah,
that's right.
But no, you're right. You're right. It, compare the kind of playfulness and warm-hearted camaraderie that's here to something like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly.
Right.
Eli Wallach and Clint Eastwood aren't exactly, the best of friends.
Right. And something like The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, or any of the Man with No Name trilogy, is sort of like he's an individual. It got individualistic qualities. He's also a wanderer to some extent, but there's no like, buddiness to him, or, there's no emotive pathos between him and another person. Like there's a shared quality between those people, especially in The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, but there's no real like camaraderie involved. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, it kind of does the opposite. It just allows the characters to exist together, and we follow them in a particular time period of their lives. And it kind of not in the same. It absolutely doesn't have the same themes. It doesn't have the same feel or anything, but it does remind me in a way of Easy Rider, which we covered, almost a year ago now, of that band of camaraderie, of travel, and just kind of like a wandering element to it that you're just kind of there with them. And I like that about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. I think that it that we don't, it's kind of refreshing to just be in the moment with these guys and just experience the things that they experienced, and just to see how their relationship develops over time. Because it or doesn't develop, they're kind of the same people from the beginning to the end. And I think that's another thing that's kind of interesting to me about this movie is it doesn't have some of the normal beats of what you would consider a film, or like the normal progression of a movie. There's no real rising action to a climax. It's more like events, and then there is a climax, a conclusion, but it's kind of, there's no real like, hey, there's like a conflict that occurs between the two or anything to set things off. It's more so just like, yeah, the events of their lives have caught up to them, and they're now seeing the consequences of their actions later on, which I think is funny too. It's it's nice to see a movie that doesn't necessarily follow the normal scope of what you consider to be like a film's trajectory. And that's kind of what I got from, watching this hour and 50-minute movie of basically these two guys traipsing across the West, riding horses and jumping in rivers and traveling down streams, and it's just a fun adventure movie altogether. Your thoughts on that, besides what I've said?
Yeah, no, it's definitely got a hippie element to it.
Sure.
When you I think like the kind of, as you were saying, like Easy Rider is kind of like a good comparison, not in like themes or anything, but just like the overall, it's a, just escape, trying to fight against, the system, trying to, be free, to be, able to do what you want, wandering around, having a good grand old time. It definitely kind of encaptures that like American hippie movement at the time. And not only that though too, just like Easy Rider, because it's again 69, so it's right in the Nixon years, also has a very downbeat, not optimistic view to that.
Sure.
The kind of like, optimism of, peace, love, and all of that is, we see is like, as in Easy Rider, and the same with this film, it's kind of like something that's not obtainable.
Yeah.
Our cast of characters.
And I think, to the point of this movie showcasing two what you would consider antagonists that are protagonists, right? Like these guys rob trains and they rob payroll, and they rob people and they're outlaws for all intents and purposes. It shows this lifestyle as sort of being, for a while while they kind of are on the run, they're also kind of living the high life. They're two guys routinely going back to a saloon where they basically have fun, get alcohol, drink out of like a tin can where they were they're pouring out of like this little bucket thing, which I thought was quite interesting as a little pitcher of beer. But who am I to say what they did in the 1890s? And just kind of partying it up, for all, just to kind of distill it. And not only that, but Paul Newman has his girl back home, and Robert Redford has Etta, who he has kind of become his woman throughout this movie. And it kind of showcases their life as being fairly good. There are some times where they're chased by a posse who are trying to get bring them down because they robbed a particular train company. But otherwise, it's kind of depicts them living like a fun life. And there's only these times where eventually some of these more sinister moments creep in, where characters might warn them, like, listen, can't do this forever. Your time is coming up where as being a 2-bit outlaw, like that ends for most people. You can't just continue to get away with it forever and just, think that you're not going to have some sort of justice. It's coming for you. And if you don't turn yourselves in, you're going to just die a bloody death. And the film kind of like continues to harp on that as it goes along, where, it looks all well and good, but things are sort of adding up over the course of the movie where, they keep making mistakes that are eventually going to cost them.
Which is something we see in Red Dead Redemption 2, obviously, with the Pinkertons chasing Dutch's gang and, like,
Sure.
The fact that in the game, Leviticus Cornwall is privately funding the Pinkertons to track down and kill all of the Vanderlyn gang because they've robbed his train one too many times.
Mm-hmm.
And it comes, obviously that's an idea that's from a movie like this idea that, you may be free and fun, but eventually somebody with enough money is gonna get pissed off and like make it their life mission to end you. Like you're taking a $20 bill one too many times, and
and I mean it comes to fruition in a pretty comical way because in this movie, Paul Newman as Butch Cassidy is kind of like the comedic side of the duo. And there's a moment where they've just gotten back from, being chased like across the country, basically like, through Wyoming and all kinds of plains from a posse who's been, basically rounded up of all the people that, they've known previously who are like, yeah, let's get Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. And they all come together and they're like, that seems odd. Why would they all work together? Because they don't seem like people that would do that. Well, it turns out that, the guy that they were robbing on the trains, like routinely is like, you know what? This shit is getting old. And, and what is really funny about that is, Paul Newman kind of takes offense to that. He's like, if he would just pay me the money that I rob, I wouldn't rob him anymore. And it's pretty funny because, again, at the end of the day, these guys are outlaws. While we like them and while we see them as protagonists, and they really don't generally harm people. And like what you would think of an outlaw, like a guy who goes around and like at gunpoint, just like shooting at everybody and taking their money.
They're gentlemanly.
Yeah, exactly.
They show them to kind of be not Robin Hood, but like as they're robbing the train, they're not, hurting people and going out of their way to slaughter everyone. So
yeah, they're just, they're kind of good natured and they're like, listen, whatever this guy's paying you to, guard the train, like it's not enough because you're putting your life on the line here and almost got blown up. So, take that in consideration. Next time, don't.
Which, by the way, what a fucking great scene that is. The second time they blow up the train safe.
Yep.
And it, like, I kind of want to know the behind the scenes of like that train car exploding and them flying back. And like, what do they do like for the practical effects for that? Like, was it miniature? Was it like, you can't really tell if it was miniature. Like,
right.
Because it's fucking hilarious how they're like, because they put more, iron onto the safe and they're like, we're going to need more dynamite to break that open. And then, hey, you think that's good? Boom! And the whole train car explodes and the wood splits everywhere. And
money flying everywhere.
Yeah, and they get knocked on their ass. And, Robert Redford's just like, got enough dynamite there, Butch? It's really great. And that's a great scene. Not only that, though, too, with the round, like afterwards, when the train shows up and the posse comes bolting like a bat out of hell on their horses from the one train car that's like this train that's been tracking the train that they're robbing, that's a fucking brilliant idea. Like that's like that's like modern, like 1890s SWAT team, like, just like oh, what's gonna happen? And then boom, bam, the posse's already out and going.
Yeah, and it's great, and I think like it kind of that this movie, if you were to just think about it, it's like it's just like some old buddy western. But honestly, it's directed very well by George Roy Hill. Not only in those scenes like you were talking about where the special effects are very well done, the fluidity of motion, the cinematography itself. I'm thinking of a scene where it's that same scene where they've just gotten back from being chased cross country, and basically Robert Redford's character, Sundance Kid, is hugging Etta, who's thought he was dead because they've gotten word that like he were being chased cross country. They're hugging outside the house. Inside, you could see through the window Paul Newman standing in the kitchen, or like the living room area, reading the newspaper in the kitchen. It's like a greatly nice framed scene with the fluidity of the characters having to move into that position. It's very nice. Like and the film has a lot of that you don't really think about from like a spaghetti western or a western perspective of like that nice framing. I think the cinematography is great in this movie, and it showcases that in a lot of scenes. I like the scene where they jump off the cliff too. Is great. It's a great moment of them contemplating like, we have a posse on our trail up on the top of the mountain. We've got a river down below us. Like, what do we do in this situation? And Robert Redford's like, I can't swim. And Paul Newman just breaks out laughing because that's the kind of the ridiculousness of their situation is like they're going to die and he can't swim to jump into the river. It's a great moment.
No, it's great. It's hilarious. It's like, you can't swim. Like, what the hell? Like, he's like.
I mean, I think that too, like, encapsulates the movie as a buddy comedy because there are these really, like, real moments that are shared between the two main characters that I think set it apart from other buddy movies. Like, it doesn't seem forced. They have a really good connection to each other. And throughout the movie, it just keeps coming back again and again to that connection and the differences in their character and the similarities too. Another really fun element is that the Sundance Kid is like excellent at sharpshooting. And they get to a point where he's like, hey, can you take out the guys on the left? And Butch Cassidy's like, you know what? I never really shot anybody before. So, it's another great moment because it also hints at like this weird, the weirdness of masculine friendship too. Like, you guys are great friends. You've traveled cross country. You've gotten into shootouts and God knows what. And yet you really don't know anything about each other either. Like personally, like Butch Cassidy doesn't know Sundance Kid is from New Jersey, and they don't know their real names. It's kind of like a fun. It's like that idea that like guys, when they get together, they just like, it doesn't matter your background or anything else. It's just like, they can just, be friends. It's kind of funny. It's like the encapsulation of masculine friendship. And I guess I would say that too, and I don't mean that like derogatorily, where it's like, oh, this movie's like, like harps on alpha maleness or anything like that. I think that if people get that from a Western or from Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid specifically, I think that are not really paying attention to the movie. There's more than just like the idea of being like this ultra masculine person to Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid.
Well, say not like that because Butch is like the brains and more suave and debonair.
Yep.
Using guile to get out of things.
Yep.
What And it's not like Robert Redford and Sundance Kid's like some beacon of overt masculinity either. Like
Yeah, I mean,
nobody's really taking that charge.
I think it has a good mix in there. I think too, though, it is kind of funny how they treat Etta sometimes. Like, there's one time where they're getting ready to leave because they're like, you know what, we got to get out of here. The heat's too bad. And Robert Redford basically takes Etta aside and he's like, you know what, we're going to Bolivia. It would be great if you could come with us because you're good cover. But if you whine or carry on about anything going on, we're going to ditch you.
AKA the menstruating.
Mm-hmm.
We can't have that.
But I like that element of it too when they go to Bolivia and they go and they're robbing all these Spanish banks, where Etta is kind of involved in their schemes. How do you feel about that? Like where, at a certain point, it's Butch, Sundance Kid, and Etta.
No, I like that she's part of the, like, you know, part of the gang and part of, like, you know, their setup and stuff. It gives it a depth, and it's, you know, really nice. So,
Do you think that the movie's saying anything about like that period of time in the 1890s of this time of lawlessness, but also a time where the expansion of America was drawing to an end the idea that lawlessness was acceptable?
that's coming to a close. No, I
Yeah.
definitely because again, that's like a big idea in Red Dead Redemption 1 and 2 is the idea, because they take place in, you know, Red Dead 2 taking place in 1899 and Red Dead 1 taking place in 1907. It's clearly like, you know, the end, like it has the theme of those games is the end of civilization, you know, of the Wild West, the taming of it, the lawlessness coming to an end. And that's obviously true, because the fact that we see that in this movie, that wild American spirit is being crushed out and chased out of the country, that they have to go to South America, which, though true to what what happened to them, is like kind of like it does work as like an idea and a metaphor. Like they can't, you know, go on living the way they, you know, are living, and they have to escape the law to try to find, you know, their freedom elsewhere, you know, in what would be considered by the American mind a less tamed, more lawless area. So,
What do you think? What do you think about the idea that like they're not really able to succeed outside of their outlaw tendencies? Because there is a point where they're like, you know what, we're gonna go straight. We're gonna get this job protecting payroll. You know, basically like glorified bodyguards as they're riding payroll through treacherous terrain. And they find out like, hey, we're probably not that good at this job. You know, what do you think that says about like the outlaw culture of that time?
Wild hearts run free. You know, can't tame a wild horse. You know, so.
I mean, I think it's interesting because, you know, I don't see Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid saying like, hey, you know, the lawlessness of the West was a good thing, right? Because it's not necessarily a good thing. Like, and this movie does not depict. I mean, I guess it does a little bit. Like once we get into Bolivia and you see all the like the Spanish gangs, it doesn't depict like the kind of lawlessness that we see in some of the other spaghetti westerns where these guys are like, you know, actually killers, and they're, you know, basically going out and you know, killing people and, you know, getting into gunfights and or taking over entire towns, stuff like that. So I don't think that this movie is like quite necessarily saying like, you know, the lawlessness is a good thing. But I do think it is, to some extent, it's saying that like the lifestyle that was being populated after, you know, like when they were trying to clean up this lawlessness was not necessarily sustainable for everybody. You know, it's not like everyone could just go out and it's like, I'm going to start my own ranch. You know, I'm going to run a farm. There were certain parts of, you know, people who were forced into like, I was an outlaw because that was fine. And now I've got to try to find something else. And that lifestyle just does not appeal to certain types of people.
Well, I hate to say it for like 1,000th time, but like Red Dead Redemption 2, we get to see John, like, you know, with John Marston, you know, foregoing his outlaw ways and like, you know, becoming like a ranch hand, and him being like, I can't fucking do this. This is, you know,
yeah,
it's not something that I know what to do and how to do, and that definitely ties with like the same message and spirit of this film is like these guys are what they are.
Yeah, you can't expect them to have lived this kind of life, you know, this chaotic but fun life, and then go immediately from that to hold like a regular job and, you know, make it straight. It just doesn't necessarily work that way. I think that the film kind of depicts that in an interesting manner, that they, you know, they try to go straight, they try to do something that doesn't involve them just robbing banks, and it doesn't work out in their favor. I found that to be like one of the more interesting excursions in their lives in this movie. Especially too, because like there is such a character as their boss who's like, yeah, you guys are fucking terrible at this, basically, like, and he still trusts them anyways, just because the Sundance Kid is a good shot, but like it ends up costing him his life, basically. There are those nice moments. I think it does a good job of showing both like the fun of being an outlaw, and also like that mashup of trying to go straight when you've been living this life for so long. What do you think about Etta as a character? Because she is a particular, specific character that is, intentionally, like kind of like a foil to the rest of the guys, both in that she's a woman and that, she's not generally, used to this kind of lifestyle. What do you think about her and involved in this movie?
Catherine Ross does a really good job as Etta Place. She's engaging, and she has good rapport, and just like Paul Newman, Robert Redford, she has a good rapport with them, and the chemistry definitely works between the three of them. She's fun when she has to be, and serious when she has to be, and I think she's she does add to the film. I think it that adds to the camaraderie that makes them feel, more than just Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid.
Yeah, because like she's part of the gang for a while, and there is that nice montage sequence of them in Bolivia of doing various heists at the bank and learning Spanish, and she becomes one of the guys basically for a little while, and it's got a nice it's a nice change up from just seeing Butch Cassidy and Sundance Kid together. So there's like a newly added element to it. I do wonder though, and I kind of found this to be one of the few weaknesses of the movie. How do you feel about all of the montage sequences that kind of drag things out? Like especially Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head with Paul Newman riding his bike with that.
No, you're right. One thing I forgot is this film has like 3 different 5-minute long montages, which are nonsense. Like, as you're talking about, you got the montage of like them stealing banks in Bolivia near the end. You have the Cheers-esque montage of them like going to New York and then getting on the steamer to go to Bolivia, and with the sepia tone photos, and then the BJ Thomas Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head bike riding segment. And we can kind of talk about this a little bit too when we talk about the soundtrack with Burt Bacharach. One, I love that song. I love Raindrops Are Falling.
Has a nice wistfulness to it.
I think it's great. And I like Burt Bacharach a lot. He's a terrific composer and a great musician. I don't understand the pairing at all. I think even as like a kid, like the first time I saw this when I was like 15 years old on like TCM at like 2:00 in the morning, it's like all I could think of in my head's like Austin Powers. Now, Mr. Burt Bacharach, and like it breaks into like a Burt Bacharach, wistfulness, and it kind of takes away from the movie in the sense that the seriousness, like again, it is at times a buddy comedy, but the seriousness of what they're, about to embark on is totally mitigated by the whole, 5-minute long bike riding, Paul Newman trick show. The only thing that scene kind of has going for is the theme that ends up kind of cropping up of like when we see the bike salesman selling the bike and he's like, it's the future of transportation. The horse is dead. This is what, society has to offer. This is what like moving forward as civilization we're going to be. And Paul Newman being like, oh, this is future tech, huh? And then later when they like get ready to go to Bolivia after they've been on the run for 40 minutes from the posse. He's like, so much for, future civilization. And you see him throw the bike and the wheels spinning. That's like great thematically. It kind of makes sense out of the scene because, again, like that whole kind of bit I've always kind of felt as kind of ridiculous and pedantic, but with that, like, new look at like the theme, how they tie the theme up, it, fine, and it is a good idea, but I think the fact that like it's this carnival of, wistfulness is just kind of like, what are we fucking doing? Like,
yeah. I mean, I found the bike ride, like, to be fair, if you're Paul Newman and you can ride a bike like that, props to you, show it off. But I do think that the montage is a little long, especially that bike riding scene. I think Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head as a song in this movie set in the 1890s is a little bit, like out of place a little. I don't mind overall the Burt Bacharach soundtrack. I think like some of the themes, especially the ones that, like, I think it's in the last montage where they're in Bolivia, where it's like the vocalization of like all the women going, I think that's actually pretty good, and it kind of matches with what I expect from a sort of Western style movie. Raindrops Keep Falling on My Head, it kind of comes out of nowhere and feels a little inappropriate. But I will say, I like the Bolivia montage scene. I think that's good. The sepia-toned montage at the middle portion where they're traveling, though, that one is definitely too long as well. I feel like those two really pad the movie out, and I think that's the biggest weakness, is those two montage parts that don't really add too much to the, to the actual proceedings.
So don't you feel like when that's playing, The Entertainer should be playing like
yeah, right, yeah, exactly. What I do like, though, is the sepia-toned beginning, which caught me off guard. I thought my fucking my the version of the movie I was watching was messed up. I'm like, what is going on here? Why am I seeing like an HDR, bled version of this movie? And I had to like fast forward and try different, I was like, why is this like this? But I eventually found out, oh, okay, it's supposed to be sepia toned here at the beginning. That's a really fun scene of Robert Redford being offended and, basically that the threatening introduction that we get to him as a character. I like that a lot. I found that to be pretty fun and like a nice face-off. And it kind of also gets you ready for later on in the movie, especially like that concluding scene of them having the standoff in the town of, like how they cannot back down. And it gets you ready for that that setup of these types of characters that they literally cannot back down.
Do you like how the escalation of violence takes place in this movie?
It does escalate, doesn't it? Yeah.
Because like it's kind of like pedantic, like a fist fight, kick to the balls, guy gets shot, to, now we're seeing squibs being used when like the Bolivian gang, they all get, slaughtered. You're seeing like, and the film's very, looks, is very keen to show you the violence, not just because I don't think it's just because it's, Butch's first kills, but like the fact that they were outgunned by like 6, gang members in Bolivia and they, killed them, and you get to see like, is that like them killing in the name of protecting payroll and this honest job? Is there any difference between that and what they do? And, good little thought there. Till what they have, run into to the climax of the film, like the escalation of violence in this film is fair. I think it's well paced. It's, total, everything kind of builds, each act of violence builds upon each other in this film.
Yeah, it definitely is very interesting of, how they come to a different conclusion later on in the movie of like, everybody's kind of doing their job. And at the beginning, they say like, you're working for a person and we're just going to rob from you and it's not a big deal, right? But eventually they find out like, no, it kind of is a big deal, like to be robbed and, have an outlaw, steal everything from you or, kind of ruin your life, even though it doesn't seem like it to them at the time. So I do like that escalation of violence. I think that works really well for the movie. It does have like I said, even though it is like, seems like it's aimless, it is, always building to that final encounter, which again, too, we didn't talk about, but the movie at the beginning has a statement that says like, most of this is true, right? Like, cause it's based off of Butch, the real life historical figure, Butch Cassidy, and some of the events in that, in those lives. But, obviously they've taken a lot of liberties of what we don't know about their lives. So it's I like how it takes those historical elements, but it builds on them with an actual like thematic, element to the film. I think it does a really good job of that.
Agreed.
What else? What else can we talk about?
I think that's about it.
I think that's about it. I think we pretty much covered it. I guess actually, how do you think this movie, feels or relates in comparison to like a spaghetti western movie of the time?
Well, two different vibes. This one you can tell, though it does look good. You can tell like it's got the 60s is a kind of panache thrown in there. If you were to compare it to like Leone when he's on a game with like The Good and the Bad and the Ugly and Once Upon a Time in the West, the due diligence that's put into everything of like making it look as time specific as possible. Because we've seen some spaghetti westerns like Django where they're like, here's your green, moldy shit wallpaper, from the 70s that we're throwing in here. There's just two different tones, for the most part. This film is also kind of an outlier when you think of like, the American Western too, because when you think of like John Wayne and stuff like that, John Wayne's not running to fucking Bolivia. John Wayne's gonna sit and fight the Indian partner, So it's got its own charm and niche to it, It's got a good mix of like, spaghetti western violence, American sensibilities, and I think it's its own little thing.
I think it's interesting too that we do kind of get that, like excursion to Bolivia that kind of feels spaghetti western-esque at times later on in the movie too. It's kind of a nice added touch to it. All right, so we got to rate this movie. So on a scale of 0 to 10, expertly performed Paul Newman bike tricks. Paul Newman on a BMX.
Which, by the way, Catherine Ross riding on that fucking handle, her asshole is like,
I know.
Is the number one winner of this film. Like, it's made out of titanium.
I was thinking that too, of like across fields and like bumpy hills that she's going down. Yeah. They're going down.
Yeah, sitting there like, I'm riding on this like, one little piece of aluminum.
So,
like,
also barefoot, which I thought was very daring. With your foot right by the wheel and the spokes, very daring to ride barefoot like that. So,
well, Paul Newman's quite the romantic, man. He probably like whispered like, "All right, got you." She's like, "Okay,"
very trusting. What would you give Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid?
I'll give it an 8.5 out of 10. I like this movie a lot. I haven't seen it in a couple of years. I have kind of over the years, I think, every time I watch it, I kind of waver on like whether or not I think it's really good or not. Not that I've ever disliked it, but like I waver between like, do I really like it or do I think it's good? I really like this movie. I think Paul Newman and Robert Redford are terrific. They're a lot of fun. They have such a great chemistry. You can see why from this film why like they would do later films together. They just work together. I think their chemistry's great. The jokes they make are fun. The story's really engaging. It's a mix, you get your train robberies, your bank robberies, an adventure down to Bolivia. We didn't even talk about the ending. I wish with the ending, with them being, killed by the Bolivian army. It freeze frames as they run out and you hear all the gunshots. I wish, for posterity's sake and for like to be more like the Wild Bunch, which came out a couple months before this film, like let it end on a bloody squib, like let them get lit up and like, show that like, this, they're dead and this is, the way is ending. But I think the film's a lot of fun. It's got a lot of great moments with like, cliff jumping, them being tracked down by the posse. Obviously, Burt Bacharach does a great job with the score. Though I'm not gonna say, like, as you said, I don't think the score is like out of place outside of B.J. Thomas. Raindrops keep falling on my head. But I think it's just a lot of fun. It's a good watch. This is pure Americana, and it's a great encapsulation of like a bunch of different ideas. So 8.5 out of 10. I like this movie a lot, and I think it's not my favorite Western by far, but I do think it's something that like everyone, especially if you do like, Westerns, it's something to check out because it's still timeless.
Yeah, I would agree with that for the most part. I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think that it is a really fun movie. It has a lot of great sequences to it. Paul Newman is excellent and very fun, very funny in this movie as the like kind of the comedic element to offset Sundance Kid sort of, brutality as a shooter. I think, both of the guys in this have a nice aspirational quality of like buddiness to them. The camaraderie is excellent. And it just, hits every right note there for you to be feeling like you're part of the team. I think it works really well. I think there's a couple areas where it does just linger a little too long. We talked about like the montage sequences. A couple of those are just maybe a little too long. I agree with the raindrops keep falling on my head. It's, as I said, it feels out of place here. I think maybe just slightly shortening the amount of time that they're on the run from the posse in that middle portion of the movie could speed things up a little bit, give it, just a little bit more chaotic flair to it. Other than that, though, I think this movie is great. It has just a lot of energy to it. And as a Western, I think it works really well in both the comedic fronts, trying to get a little bit more of the violence, but also lightheartedness of the outlaw film as well. Because, too many times we see, Westerns, spaghetti Westerns that are either, like John Wayne-esque, which are kind of over the top Westerns, or, spaghetti Westerns, which are more violent and, confrontational. Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, somewhere in between, fun, violent, also, has a very nice theme about the closure of the lawlessness in the Wild West. So I like it a lot. Definitely glad that I was influenced to watch this by you. Had a great time. So 8 out of 10.
There we go.
All right. So, I think next time we said we want to try to do a Gene Hackman movie. Not quite sure what we're going to do yet. Couple options. I'm open to any of the above.
I think I have 5 in the chamber.
Yep. You had said that there were a few you wanted to do. Like I said, I'm open to all of them. I think any would be a good choice. So mull that over further and see what we can do. Now, also, we do have St. Paddy's Day coming up, but
we no new Leprechaun, so we're in clear.
I think, do we have one other Leprechaun movie to do though, or did we do them all? I can't remember.
Oh, we did them all.
I think we did them all.
I don't care.
I'm done with the Leprechaun movies. What day is St. Paddy's Day, by the way? Oh, the 17th. Okay, so yeah, we'll be into Gene Hackman at that time. So
I was gonna say, yeah, we're done. No, we didn't do Leprechaun Returns.
See, yeah, I thought there was one other one that we did.
So we're gonna do that after Gene Hackman, I guess.
Okay, all right. So we're gonna be late to the proceedings again.
Well, who gives a shit? It's Leprechaun movies.
Yeah, I know. I mean, and Leprechaun
You're
Returns doesn't
You're
even
acting
really have.
after Leprechaun Origins. I never want to go back.
I mean, this one's not really connected, but it just is. It has
Doesn't
really
matter.
nothing to do with Leprechaun at all. But you know what? We've come this far.
As I say, it doesn't even matter because Leprechaun, Origins was half fucking music video.
Yeah.
Sorry. I have a couple of ideas for Gene Hackman. I'm gonna throw them out there. The French Connection, I would love to do. The Conversation, I would love to do. We got Superman, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
Enemy of the State. It's a Will Smith movie from 1998. It's a film I've seen a billion times though, because I used to play it all the time on ACM back in the day. It's a good little movie. I don't know if you've ever seen that. Obviously, the Royal Tenenbaums, because we are Wes Anderson fans here, and that's personally still my favorite Wes Anderson film. That'd be a great movie to do. With March Madness coming up, and I don't want to say it because I also kind of don't want to do the movie. Hoosiers.
Yep. Yeah.
But yeah.
I don't know yet.
Well, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
throwing it
yeah.
out there for you.
Yeah, we'll definitely think about it.
You don't want to do the French Connection with Papa Doyle?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be fine to do all of them. I'm open to any of them, really.
So we're doing Gene Hackman month.
Gene
All
Hackman,
right.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be good to do any of them. So, because like I said, I haven't really seen many Gene Hackman movies. So,
Which is, we could do Welcome to Mooseport.
Mm.
His last movie with Ray Romano. Don't you guys remember me? I'm Raymond. And I used to do things because my mom liked me and that Brad Garrett guy. Raymond.
Ray, yeah. And he also had said Royal Tenenbaums too.
The Quick and the Dead, Unforgiven.
True.
Mississippi Burning.
Yeah, I had said that one as well. Kind of timely. Yeah, I don't know. Probably the French Connection or the Conversation will be the ones that we split on. So
I can't believe never seen any of them.
Nope, never seen either.
Well, the French Connection you would like because it's a hard-boiled detective film in New York City in 1971. And The Conversation is a Francis Ford Coppola film in his peak in the 70s when everything he did was fucking amazing. So,
oh yeah, one thing we didn't point out about Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Real quick, Sam Elliott appearance.
Blink and you'll miss.
Yeah, and he's in there. He's in there as a card player. So, fun note. All right, well, thanks for listening to our episode on Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Hope you enjoyed and hope you come back for our Gene Hackman episode. If you want to subscribe, get updates to all our new episodes, we're on pretty much any podcast app that you can think of. Anything that you listen to, anywhere you get your podcasts, we're on it. So subscribe, leave us a nice review. We have Facebook and Blue Sky, so you can follow us on there. We post routinely about our new episodes. And then you can email us at bloodandblackromepodcast@gmail.com. Write to us. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, what movies you want us to talk about. And we'll keep that in consideration. And, of course, you can donate to us at our Patreon page or at Spotify.
Sorry.
It's okay. You're just coughing up a lung over there. If you donate to us, we'll put it back towards beer. So we appreciate that in advance. Thanks for listening to our episode. And hope you have a good week. And until next time.
Take care.